Tell me what's wrong.
It's no big deal. It's a video game.
Yeah. No. Go back to my shit. Yo, no, it's fucking bullshit, man. You think it's hey, motherfucker. Hey, man. Whoa.
No disrespect. I'm just with you.
Jason Mayhem Miller could have had it all. The MMA fighter showed great promise in the mid-2000s with a string of wins and a rising social profile that led him to hosting the popular reality show Bully Beatdown. But today, all Miller has to show for himself is a string of assault charges and a damaged reputation. So what happened? To some, the trajectory of Miller's career might not be all that surprising. There were early signs that he might be a bad egg, but either the warning signs were ignored or passed off as youthful energy that he would soon grow out of. Spoiler alert, Miller never grew out of his bad habits. While the details of his youth are fuzzy, it seems that Miller came into the world ready to fight. He joined the wrestling team at his school and was soon on the hunt for other types of martial arts to get involved with. He challenged anyone he could to a fight, which eventually led to him being expelled from his first high school. For some, getting expelled might have been a wake-up call, but not Miller. For better, or likely for worse, Miller still sought out any opportunity he could to fight. Miller started to show up at karate and judo schools in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he was living at the time, and challenging instructors and students to fights. While some indulged him, it soon became obvious that Miller wasn't interested in the finesse involved in those art forms. He wanted to fight and do some damage. After bludgeoning several training partners, Miller found himself increasingly unwelcomed at martial arts academies across the city. But just as Miller was growing increasingly frustrated and not having an outlet for his rage or talent, a judo instructor took notice of him and encouraged Miller to check out a small gym that specialized in mixed martial arts. The training was punishing, but it was exactly what Miller had been looking for. He embarked on some of the most rigorous training of his life in the hopes of becoming a champion. While Miller finally had the fight training he wanted, he still hadn't broken into the professional world, so that was his next mission. At 17 years old, Miller got his chance to step into the spotlight by fighting then 27-year-old Al Superman Dill in Virginia Beach for just $300. While Dill showed up with a decade's worth of experience on Miller, Miller had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and he was ready. Miller walked away the winner, and his professional career had begun. The fight in Virginia Beach left Miller's childhood behind him. Rumor has it, Miller even missed his own prom to take part in the fight, which speaks to his focus on his goals. He wasn't a boy getting in trouble at school anymore. He wanted to test himself in the fight world. At the time, the UFC was still relatively new, and it's likely that many people in Miller's life were skeptical that he could pursue a viable career in that field, but Miller persisted. For the next 6 years, he continued to train and racked up an impressive 16-3 professional record. When the UFC finally came calling, it was to face up against George St. Pierre, who had quickly become a fan favorite in the MMA world. Despite his formidable opponent, Miller seemed confident. Speaking on his background in Thai boxing, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu, Miller told the press he had, quote, everything you need to be a certified ass whipper. Despite his bravado, Miller wasn't a match for St. Pierre's finely tuned skills. Although he demonstrated his toughness during the first round, Miller quickly became bloody and exhausted and spent the remaining time just trying to stand his ground. St. Pierre took the unanimous decision with matching scores of 30-27 across the board. Despite his defeat, Miller had remained smiling throughout the fight, and it was clear that the scrappy fighter had some skills, or at the very least, the ability to entertain. 1 year after Miller left the UFC, he had what is arguably known as one of the best fights in his career. He was matched against Robbie Lawler. In the first 2 rounds, it looked like Lawler, who was already showing great promise, was going to achieve a knockout. But Miller surprised everyone by coming back strong in the 3rd round, securing a submission with an arm triangle choke, winning the bout, and winning the Icon Sports middleweight title. When looking back at Miller's career, that fight is still one of the most admired. Despite this promising development, Miller was inconsistent. He showed legit skills at times, but never quite seemed to make it to the top. In 2009, Miller came close to a major title when he went up against Jake Shields for the Strikeforce middleweight championship. Miller ended up losing by unanimous decision, but he almost came off victorious, catching Shields in a rear naked strangle. Shields didn't tap out before the clock ended, and Miller never came as close to a major title again. At the same time Miller was taking part in Strikeforce, an opportunity came calling that would catapult Miller into stardom. Mark Burnett, the prolific and award-winning producer behind shows like Survivor and The Voice, was developing a show at MTV called Bully Beatdown, and he wanted Mayhem Miller to be the host. Bully Beatdown found supposedly real-life bullies and challenged them to fight against a professional MMA fighter for a chance to win $10,000. How much money the bully would win would depend on how well they performed against their opponent, and any leftover funds would go towards their bully victims. Despite criticism that Bully Beatdown was staged, Miller fiercely defended its legitimacy. When it was revealed that one of the bullies was an actor and another a professional stuntman, Miller actually took to the internet to create a post that made fun of anyone who called the show a fabrication. Miller insisted that there was no way the fights could be staged and insisted the bullies were real-life douchebags. Real or fake, the show enjoyed a successful 3-year run and had given Miller a large platform. It seemed his career was only just getting started. In 2011, Miller was invited to sign a multi-fight agreement with the UFC. It looked like he was about to get the life he had always dreamed of, but it was that same year that Miller started to lose control. Just a few short months after signing his UFC contract, Miller was arrested by police in Chatham County, North Carolina, after being accused of simple assault and false imprisonment after he allegedly put his own sister in a headlock when she attempted to leave a house party they were both attending. Miller was able to quickly post bail and be released, but that was just the beginning of never-ending legal troubles for the rising star. This could have been the moment of redemption for Miller. He was already known for being a controversial figure. He had already gotten in mix-ups with the law a few times, and he was known for causing trouble in front of the camera and behind the scenes. Anyone else remember the brawl between him and Nick Diaz? But hey, he was a guy with a great contract and a hit show. He could have apologized, gotten help, and continued to build his career, but it wasn't to be. Cut to a year after the arrest in Chatham County, and Miller was kicked out of the UFC. Miller had promised to retire if he lost another fight, but before he got the opportunity, the president Dana White publicly fired him, stating that a backstage incident was the reason for letting Miller go. As if being publicly fired wasn't brutal enough, White had some choice words for Miller in a statement.
But come on, man, take this thing serious. You want to be a clown, you can do that later. Do that on your reality show, but I don't know.
Ouch. Thing is, Miller couldn't do it on his reality show. Bully Beatdown was canceled later that year. Maybe it was the crashing of all of his dreams or an ego that had been blown up too big, but after that, things really started to spiral for Miller, and they haven't seemed to stop ever since. If putting his sister in a headlock seemed odd, Miller's next foray into illicit activities was even more bizarre. August 13th, 2012. The pastor at Mission Viejo's Mission Hills Church called the police to report a break-in. When officers arrived at the scene, they found books, pictures, and other items smashed all over the floor. Spray paint covered the walls, and a fire extinguisher had been released, leaving foamy residue all over the place. When the police followed the trail of residue, they found a man buck naked and unconscious on a sofa. The man, of course, was Miller, who further confused police by only answering Mayhem when they asked his name. Miller ended up causing more than $400 in damage to the church and likely irreversible damage to his career. The following year, Miller made a return to MMA with a fight against Mattia Schiavolin. While he lost the fight, Miller claimed he felt a positive energy being back in the cage. In an interview, he said he was going to turn his life around. Just a few months later, Miller was arrested for domestic battery. Twice. Miller was arrested on August 11th and again on August 22nd, 2013, for what eventually was combined into 2 felony counts of corporal injury of a spouse.
Rough sex, choking, peeing, golden showers where somebody gets urinated on. They have some of that night.
2 months later, Miller received a misdemeanor contempt of court charges for violating the restraining order against his alleged victim. While a jury eventually acquitted him of these charges, it wasn't long before Miller was facing more accusations of domestic abuse. October 9th, 2014. Miller began tweeting. This wasn't unusual, as Miller had by that time built quite an internet persona and was known for being inflammatory on the social media platform. But his content on that day was a little out of the ordinary, even for Miller. Turns out, Miller had failed to show up for a court date relating to another domestic abuse and stalking charge. And so, police arrived at Miller's house with a warrant, but Miller refused to come out for 5 hours. Police waited outside his home, demanding Miller present himself, but instead of complying, Miller tweeted. In his tweets, Miller claimed he'd missed court because he slept too long and chastised police for what he perceived to be a waste of resources. Finally, after 5 hours, a SWAT team blew off the locks to his door and Miller was taken into custody. Unsurprisingly, Miller's rap sheet got longer and longer. He was arrested in Laguna Beach in 2015 for once again causing disturbance, this time inside of a restaurant. Miller was charged with battery of a peace officer, unlawful fighting, and resisting arrest. Later that year, Miller racked up another domestic abuse charge. In 2016, he got a DUI. Around the same time, he got a burglary and vandalism charge after he vandalized a tattoo shop. Later that same year, he was charged with assault and battery after allegedly attacking a security guard and spitting on a police officer. In 2017, Miller was officially convicted of felony domestic battery. He accepted a plea deal and received a 3-year probation and a suspended 4-year sentence. With this sentencing, Miller was made aware that any probation violation would be punishable with up to 4 years in jail. For some, that would mean being on their best behavior. Any guesses as to how Miller acted? Over the next 2 years, Miller was once again arrested for felony vandalism, this time at his girlfriend's house. He was also charged with first-degree burglary and grand theft auto. He took another plea deal and served several months in jail. This brings us to Miller's latest mix-up with the law. In 2021, he received another assault and battery charge after breaking a man's ribs at a bar. A month later, he was tased by police for resisting arrest for another domestic violence charge. Halfway through 2022, and we haven't heard much from Miller, but there's still time. With his impressive arrest record, it wouldn't be surprising if he found himself serving a lengthy prison sentence. Then again, he's managed to avoid any serious repercussions so far. Maybe we'll see another news article about him beating up another poor sucker in just a few months. Who knows exactly what fuels Miller's decisions? It could be drugs, rage, poor mental health, or one too many hits to the head. Whatever the reason, it doesn't seem like his habits are going to change anytime soon. While at one time, Miller may have seemed like a strange but enjoyable character, now he honestly just seems sad. I guess the higher you climb, the further you fall. At least we'll always have Bully Beatdown. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
If I wasn't a fighter, I'd probably be the most violent stand-up comedian known to Earth.